Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast, part 2 of our conversation with longtime NFL linebacker London Fletcher, is brought to you by Compassion International. We've told you about Compassion for a while now. They've been a great partner and sponsor to this podcast. And listen, for $38 a month, you can release a child from poverty. It's that simple. And this is a great opportunity for you if you're a family person, you're married, you have kids. Get your whole family involved and look to our website, compassion.com/sportspectrum. And there's a list of children there just waiting to be sponsored. Your chance to pray about it, select the child that you feel led to, and then sponsor that child. And you do, when you do, this connects you to a child across the globe. And it's $38 a month, the best $38 you'll spend every single month. And you connect with this child. You're able to write them letters. You're able to connect with them and let them know about you and your family. And then they write you back in their language. It's really great. And we get letters for the boy that we sponsor, my family and I, each month, or maybe every other month. But you can write a letter as often as you'd like. If you'd like to write a letter every single week, you can do that. And it's a great way to connect with a child. But even more than that, you're releasing them from poverty. You're giving them hope. That's what every child needs. That's what every child deserves. Education, tutoring, medical care, all done in the name of Jesus. Sponsor a child today through Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum and sponsor a child today. Today's guest on the podcast, part 2 of our conversation with 4-time Pro Bowl linebacker London Fletcher, here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Yesterday in part 1, we heard his journey, his incredible story of just overcoming just a difficult time as a youngster, and how he made it to football and then made it to the NFL. Really, it started with him going to Division III John Carroll University. And so we talked to him yesterday about that, where his faith was as a kid, and just growing up in a place where his 17-year-old sister was killed, how he was staring down the barrel of a gun as a teenager and thought his life was over. Just incredible stories yesterday in part 1. So listen to that episode for sure. Then come back, listen to here, part 2. Then come back and listen here to part 2 of our conversation, where today we talk about 2 important things in his life. His faith, when he made Christ the Lord of his life, which happened during his NFL career, which is really a great story. And then we talk about his NFL career, just what it's like to play in a Super Bowl, playing for that greatest show on turf team, and just some of the incredible feats that he was able to accomplish. I mean, we're talking about 256 consecutive NFL games played, 16 years, 16 games every year, never missed a game in his entire career playing linebacker. One of only 5 players in NFL history to play over 250 consecutive games. London Fletcher, just an incredible story, and he's also a nominee for the class of 2019 Pro Football Hall of Fame. You know what? I think he's got a shot at making the Hall of Fame. I really do, because he was just consistently solid, never missed a game, and just one of those guys that was beloved by his teammates, and he was effective on the field. 4-time Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl champion. Currently doing work for CBS Sports as an NFL analyst. Let's get to part 2 of our conversation here with London Fletcher, former NFL linebacker, on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Division III schools, London, Division III schools don't produce many NFL players. And despite you being a first-team All-American linebacker 2 straight years, you go undrafted by the NFL in 1998. When did you begin to think that you had the goods, though, to make it to the NFL, that you could play in the NFL? Was there ever a time during your college career where you thought, I think I can play on the next level?
It's I had a couple coaches who had either some type of ties to the NFL. Our strength and conditioning coach at John Carroll, he had worked for the Browns years before, and he felt like I had the talent to play in the National Football League. There's a couple other coaches who had either coached my defensive coordinator, who was my head coach in high school, who actually became my defensive coordinator at John Carroll. He had coached plenty of guys in high school who had going on to play pro ball. And he even told me back in high school he thought I could play pro, but I just thought he was just, kind of blowing smoke a little bit. And, it was really, I wasn't truly convinced about it until, scouts started coming around a little bit and checking me out. And I'm starting to just continue to excel in the sport. But I still was just like, man, I'm, 5'10", and I play middle linebacker, so it just didn't know. So I was like, okay, well, I transitioned to a safety in college and stuff like that. So it was a lot of different things that I wasn't certain about. But once I got actually into the Rams camp, mini camp, and training camp, there was no doubt that I felt like I could play. Once I was around other pros and competing against them, that's when I knew for certain that I can make it in the National Football League.
Do you remember that sort of welcome to the NFL moment for you, whether it was training camp, a preseason game, or even in your first regular season action? Do you remember that moment? Every guy has that sort of moment, whether it's getting beat or, going up against one of the Hall of Famers or meeting somebody that's your hero. What was your welcome to the NFL moment?
Probably I would say meeting Jackie Slater, who's a Hall of Famer, offensive tackle for the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
And he was doing the preseason games for the Rams. So we went to scrimmage the Colts up at their training camp in Indiana. And maybe it was I think they trained in Champaign at that point in time, Illinois. And Jackie came, he was watching practice, and I come off on the sideline, and he was like, man, it's just glaring how fast you are, how much faster you are than everybody else on the football team. You're standing out, something to that nature. And, here I am, like, man, this Jackie Slater said it. Like, wow, that was kind of, just a welcome to the NFL moment, I guess you could say. And also it gave me a great deal of confidence too.
Yeah, I mean, Jackie was a legend, certainly with the Rams, and his son Matthew now plays with the Patriots, and he was on this podcast and talked about the influence his dad had, not just from playing in Hall of Fame type career, but also as a man of faith. So for you, you mentioned your faith doesn't really become more real to you until you're 25, 30 years old. So take us to the moment, maybe for you, London, when you actually decided, okay, yes, I'm going to make that decision to follow Christ, to make him the Lord of my life. Was that something that happened during an NFL type of season, or was that an off-season thing? Take us to the moment when that happened for you.
It was, it started during the off-season, and I want to get the exact year, man. You got to get me thinking about back. I think it was the off-season of 2004, maybe.
When you were with Buffalo, right?
2004. Yes, going into the 2004 season. So, I started kind of feeling Christ nudging at me, telling me I needed to come to him because the same things that I was doing prior to having a relationship with Christ, they just weren't as enjoyable. I just wasn't enjoying, all the different things they're doing, whether it's, hanging out, partying, doing all the other things, that, sinning and all those types of things. It just I wasn't enjoying it. And so I would say early in the offseason, it just kept, Christ just kept nudging at me. And then it was during training camp of that season, during training camp, I eventually went to chapel, and, we used to have a Bible study during training camp. And, it was that day that I decided, here I'm going to give my life to Christ. It was early in August of 2004, and it was just like, man, when I gave my life to Christ, the things that I was looking for, that peace, that happiness, that joy that I was looking for, and all those other things came in an instant when I gave myself to Christ, my life to Christ, and it was just like, man, I wish I had done this years ago. Just that peace, that gratification, that joy, man, that void that I was missing, it came, right away once I gave my life to Christ. And and it was the thing about once you give your life to Christ, especially during training camp. Training camp is known back then. It was 2-a-day practices. You're hot. It's hot. You're up early, going to bed late. But I was so on fire for the Lord, like I'd be up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, reading the Bible. Just couldn't get enough, of God's word, and go to practice, and I'm just balling, just praying right before the play. It's not just all kind of, stuff that I couldn't even imagine doing the year before. But it was just like, man, that's how much, I was on fire for the Lord, and that's how He was impacting my life.
What was, what was it like after, in the immediate after? I mean, I know you said it was instantaneous in a lot of ways, and I love that sort of conversion. You feel it, it's happened. But then what, right? Because now you have a season to play, and you're in Buffalo at this time. You had gone from the Rams, and I want to go back to the Rams in a minute, but you're in Buffalo at this time, and you have this new sort of found faith. So how did you respond? What type of changes did you see in your life? Even into your football, I guess, playing career, now that you had, sort of the Lord in your life. What was that like?
Well, the thing I was first and foremost concerned about, I used to play this angry game, I was angry, like cussing people out on the football field. And, here I am thinking like, man, how can I represent Christ and still be the type of football player that I was accustomed to being?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to, claim Christianity and yet still be talking the same way on the football field and, not showing Christ. So that was like initial struggle for me, but it was like, what, the crazy thing is just this how the Lord works is my game actually got better because now there wasn't any clutter I was dealing with. There wasn't any, all the different chaos and all those other things that was a part of my life prior to giving my life to Christ. Now those things were eliminated. So, things just slowed down so much for me. It was almost like I'm saying the movie The Matrix when, if you see a bullet being shot at Wesley Snipes and or was it Keanu Reeves? I can't remember who that is. The bullet shot at him and he's just, dodging the bullet, in slow motion. That was what I was feeling, during that time. And my game just, it took off a whole nother level. And, I was like, man, this is great. I need to get baptized right away. I would have got baptized probably like a week later. it was just like I was all in, right?
That's really great. We're talking to London Fletcher here on the Sports Spectrum podcast, and I'm going to go kind of backwards. So we're kind of jumping around a little bit. But you start your career with the Rams. You mentioned that. It's interesting to me. I just thought about this too. You played with Kurt Warner, and you were on that Super Bowl team. And I wonder, because you weren't walking with the Lord during your time with the Rams, at least based upon what you told me. But thinking back, is there a guy like Kurt and some others that maybe had an influence on you and you didn't even realize it, maybe planting seeds for you until 2004 when you started walking with the Lord?
Yeah, I'd say Aeneas Williams had a great influence on me. Aeneas came in 2001, which was my last season in St. Louis, and Aeneas was a strong man of God, strong man of Christ and faith. And just watching him, observing him, and how he carried himself, the peace that he had, and the way he carried his business on and off the field, it just really it resonated with me. And I can look at him and like, man, I want that peace that he has in his life, because he just always seemed like he just had peace. And here I am, man. I got chaos in my life. Just a lot of stuff going on. So that was kind of a seed that was planted, a couple years prior to that. Then once I got to Buffalo, I want to say like 2003, Detroit Benson came to the Bills, another guy who I observed and watched him, and he was kind of, he was pouring into my life and other players on the team. So, just those two guys definitely were people that I looked at and helped bring me to Christ.
So you're at the Rams. So we'll go back a little bit here, and let's go on the field, and we'll talk a little football for a second. So you make it to the Rams in '98 after being undrafted. Then you go on to play in all 16 games as a rookie, which is great. And then in your second year, you helped lead the Rams, along with the greatest show on turf, of course, to a Super Bowl victory. You got your Super Bowl ring your second year in the league. What memories come to mind when I bring up that Super Bowl win over Tennessee? Because there's so much I remember about that game, about that season, and even about that week at the Super Bowl in Atlanta, which was not the greatest weather in the world. Just what comes to mind when you think about that Super Bowl and that season for you?
Just really the journey more so than the game. I think where we started during preseason, during training camp, we were a team that had finished, I think, 4-12 the year before. Last in our division, one of the worst teams in football, and nobody really expected us to do anything. Now we had, made the trade for Marshall Faulk, acquired actually Trent Green during the offseason. He signed him as a free agent. He was going to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
He gets injured in preseason, tears his ACL, and Kurt is named the starter, and here he is, this guy who is the bag groceries, Arena League football guy.
Yeah.
You got him, undrafted guy. You got this undersized Division III reject starting at middle linebacker. You just got a lot of different misfits and guys that you wouldn't think would eventually be starters and a team that would win the Super Bowl. But throughout the course of the year, just continue to see how we played and we gaining confidence each and every week. So eventually, man, it was just, in our mind, it was like there was no doubt that we were going to win each and every game we were playing. It's just, really the only question was, well, not how much.
And that was what that season was like, watching you guys. Those games were crazy, the amount of scoring that they were doing, really setting a pace for what the NFL is like today, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Stuff that I'm saying now, that offense was doing 20 years ago. So it's fun to see now, but I can remember just being a part of it. It's like, man, this is some fun stuff, man.
Yeah, but did you think you were just going to win a Super Bowl every year after that? Because you get it in your second year, and it ended up being the only Super Bowl you played in and won. So is it like to the, you're rich and spoiled at that point as far as winning Super Bowls, and then it just doesn't happen again? It really makes you appreciate how hard it is to get a Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. We thought we'd definitely repeat as champions. When you look at the makeup of the team, we also were a really young team. I don't think we really lost any. We lost a couple guys via free agency, but I would say the majority, I would probably be close to 20 guys, 20 starters were back on that team the next year. But, it's a lot different being the hunters as opposed to the hunted. And, team the next year, people were gunning for us. We had the bullseye on our back. Kind of struggled through some injuries, stuff like that with the team, and we finished 10-6, barely made the playoffs and lost in the first round. But the next year we go back, it was like, we're back, man. We went into the Super Bowl against the Patriots, 14-point favorites, and again, it wasn't a question of if we were going to win. It was just about how many,
Yeah.
How many are we going to win by? So that was really the only question mark going into that game. But, we all know how that kind of turned out.
Yeah, we won't talk much about that, although that was when the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick dynasty began. I want to ask you about just your career, because you go on to play, a couple more seasons with the Rams after the Super Bowl. Then you're in 5 years with Buffalo, and then your final 7 with the Redskins, 16 seasons total. An incredible career, and really, in my mind, just coming from where you came from. But you get to make four Pro Bowls, but even more, it still blows my mind. I'm sure you get asked about it all the time, but you never missed a game. And that's 16 seasons playing a position like linebacker where you're hitting people on every play, it seems like. and you never miss a game, 256 to be exact, only 5 players in the history of the league to play over 250 consecutive games. I guess I have a couple questions off that. Did you ever miss a game in college? I'm just curious if you were ever injured in college.
I missed a game, but it wasn't due to injury.
Okay.
It was due to discipline.
Discipline. There you go. Well, now you got to tell that story.
I got suspended my second game. It was a football game. Second game because I skipped out on Sunday conditioning.
Okay.
Yeah, so they suspended me for a game, but I didn't miss a game for injury in college. I missed one in high school.
Okay.
With a sprained ankle.
So how important was it for you? That was it. Well, how important was it for you as you go along here and you're playing in 50 straight games and then 100 straight games and you're like, this has become a badge of honor for me. I can't miss any games. How important was it for you to play hurt and not miss a game?
You know, it's something that I guess once I got over 200, it was like, okay, man, you come this far, you got to keep going. But it wasn't, before I knew it, I was, I guess, 10 years consecutive without missing a game. That's when, somebody kind of mentioned it where like, oh, you play 10 consecutive seasons and never missed a game. But I looked at it, it was almost like, I couldn't imagine not playing. So it was just like, man, I love playing that much. I love to compete. Like, I don't want to sit on the sideline. I don't want to watch other people play. It's just not. I don't like that. I don't enjoy that. That's why I got suspended in college for the missing the. I missed that workout because I was a backup at that point in time, my first year playing, and I didn't play as much as I wanted. So I was not happy about that. So, but I couldn't imagine not playing. I don't know. To me, it was like, all right, if it wasn't like, there's no way you can play in this game, I'm playing. So it never got to the point where it was like, there's no way you can play in this game because of the injury that you have. I had some pretty significant injuries.
That's what I wanted to ask you. What type of injuries did you have?
I've had dislocated, separated shoulder in college. Later next week, sprained MCL, second degree MCL sprain, hyperextended knee, high ankle sprains, just hamstring injuries. Those are things that little chip fracture in my foot. But, stuff like that where I was still able to, good tape job, but maybe Novocaine shout out if on my foot or something like that, if it was, depending on what the ailment was. And, all right, let's go. And not only let's go, I'm going out here with the same expectations as if I was totally healthy.
Is there ever a time, London, where you almost didn't play, where the training staff or coaches or somebody was like, no, you're not playing, and you said, no, I am? Was there ever a moment where that happened and you were close to not playing, but you pushed through?
Not with the trainer staff said, no, you're not playing. It was one of those things where I guess after you get to a certain number of games played and they look at some of the injuries I've had and I played, they're like, well, anybody can play. He can play. It was just kind of, they would always just kind of be like, all right, let's see how treatment goes, and you might be a game time decision. There was one particular place time in Buffalo had a hamstring injury, so it forced me to then complete the game. Prior, I think I missed like the second half of the game, and so that's how significant the hamstring injury was. And all week I, wasn't really able to practice, getting my treatment, all those types of things. Making progress, but still like, okay, I just don't know. So I'm driving to the stadium, the day of the game, and so the plan was, okay, linebacker coach would take me out, work me out, see see if I would be able to go or not. And literally, as I'm driving to the game, I'm thinking, man, I just don't, like, I may not be able to play. And I was kind of in tears, like, man, that I was probably going to not be able to play the game. It wasn't about me missing, my streak. It was like, man, I'm letting my teammates down here, and I want to play football. Like, it was more about that. Once I got there, and my coach worked me out, and he was like, hey, man, be honest with me. Can you go? So I was like, yeah, I can be first and second down, and then, let somebody else play third down. Sure enough, going to the game, and Takeo gets injured. And so it was going to be him and another guy play second nickel defense, and Big Hill got injured. Now I got to play the whole game. We're going against Michael Vick and the Falcons. It worked up, but I played the whole game, and it was fine. That was the closest, I guess, I came to not playing.
And then you retire in 2013. Did you know when it was time? Was that something that you kind of had an idea of before the season started, or was it was it as you went through that season? And I'm trying to remember how it worked, but was it after the season or as you go through the season that you realized, I think I'm done here?
No, I kind of felt like going into that year, that was going to be my last year. Because really, even after the 2016 season, I thought long and hard about, possibly even retiring after the 2015 season. We hadn't made the playoffs, lost in the first round, and it was like, okay, I was just like at that point almost on the verge, like, man, I'm ready to move on, do other things. I played at that point, 240 straight games, like, man, So it just took me a lot. And if I was going to play the next year, I was going to need. I had a really bad elbow injury. My ankle was really bad, so I was going to have surgery on both those injuries in order to play. I hadn't had any surgeries prior to that. It was like, do I want to have surgery? Do I want to go through the rehab process and all those different things? My family, my wife and children were living in Charlotte during the season at that point in time. That was my first year being away from them. Do I want to be away from them another season? And longer because I'm going to have to rehab up in D.C. So there's a lot of stuff that I was weighing and dealing with. And eventually it was like, okay, I need to find, some type of motivation if I'm going to do it. And eventually I did. And, but I pretty much knew 16 was going to be my last season. But it was just, for me, I just needed to make sure I stayed in the right mindset and not think about it, like still go about approaching this the way I've always approached it, each and every game.
Yeah. You retired in 2013. We mentioned the Hall of Fame nomination. You're also doing broadcast work, as we talked about with CBS. You're a husband, you're a dad. So let's close with this. So much happening in your life, lots of great things. What are you learning from God? What is the Lord teaching you during this time of life, London Fletcher, that's kind of been hitting you, maybe bullseye right in your face? What are you learning from God?
Man, it's I think now what I really focus on is just trying to be a better husband to my wife, a better father to my children, being one that the type of husband, the type of father that Christ wants me to be for them. So just praying for them, trying to just do it the way Christ wants me to do it. And I come up short all the time. It's just like a constant struggle. Like, and my wife, she'll remind me, my shortcomings. But it's just like, man, just want to be the type of husband and the type of father that Christ wants me to be. Those are the things that's most important to me. To just doing those things, and in a manner that will be pleasing to Him. I think it's so important because we're only going to have these children under our roof for so long, and just I have a 11-year-old girl, 10-year-old boy, and an 8-year-old girl. In the next, you're talking about 10 to 12 years, they'll all be out of our house.
Oh yeah.
So just really preparing them and equipping them to, put Christ first in their lives and being productive, loving citizens, and followers of Christ. So that's is really what I focus on.
He is London Fletcher, 4-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, one of only 5 players in the history of the league to play in over 250 consecutive games, and now Pro Football Hall of Fame nominee. So much happening with him. Lord London, we appreciate you sharing your story, sharing your journey and your testimony, and we wish you nothing but the best. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jason.
And we thank you for listening to our conversation with London Fletcher, 4-time Pro Bowler, longtime NFL linebacker here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. That was part 2 that you just heard right now. Part 1 was released yesterday. So make sure you listen to both part 1 and part 2 of our conversation with London Fletcher. Both just really fascinating podcasts and conversations, talking to him about growing up just in a difficult environment, one of 5 children, and then overcoming all of that, going to a Division III school with the odds stacked against you, and then making it all the way to the NFL. And not only making it to the NFL, playing 16 seasons, and not only playing 16 seasons, but playing every game in 16 seasons, never missing a game in his NFL career. Really appreciate London Fletcher for being here on the podcast. We also appreciate you for listening to this podcast. You can always reach us on sportspectrum.com. That is the big website where all of our content is found. Daily devotionals every single morning at 6 a.m., as well as content, articles, videos every day on the intersection of sports and faith. And here's a really great opportunity for you. Go to sportspectrum.com and click on the magazine subscribe area. You can get 4 issues of our magazine. It's a quarterly magazine, really great magazine. $18. That's all it is for an entire year. $18. And you can subscribe to the Sports Spectrum magazine. I highly recommend it. The magazine is awesome. It's a great tool to hand out to people at youth groups, men's ministries, all these different places, churches, sports teams, whatever it is. Just a great sort of piece of literature, if you will, to hand to people. That's not in their face. It doesn't kind of scream Bible, cross, Jesus on it. But when you read it, these stories are impactful and powerful, and they're all on the intersection of sports and faith, glorifying God. So highly recommend you subscribe to the Sports Spectrum magazine. It's $18 for an entire year, a great deal. You get 4 issues, plus you get our welcome issue. So really it's 5 issues of the Sports Spectrum magazine. Check it out over at sportspectrum.com. We want to thank our partners, Compassion International, as well, for sponsoring this podcast. You can change a child's life by releasing them from poverty. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. $38 a month. Release a child from poverty. You can make a difference. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum and sponsor a child today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. My name is Jason Romano. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. This is Sports Spectrum.